We have Senator Grove here.
Hi, good morning, ladies. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
When we were noodling on a theme for 2021 last year, we thought our federal government was in safe hands. Little did we know. But anyway, we turned our attention to cleaning up our own house. Let's fix California. As goes California, so goes the nation, which to me is kind of a scary thought at this point, because California is responsible for leading the nation into some oppressive and irresponsible policies that have been imposed by unelected bureaucrats that leave us short on water, electricity, gas, housing, cash, jungle primaries, and possibly unconstitutional election oversight, leaving us with a single party supermajority that can and does do anything they feel like doing, whatever strikes their fancy. And we haven't even mentioned what's happening to our education system, our immigration rights, censorship by big tech, and this list just goes on. But how did we get here? And what can we do to reverse these trends? So each month this year, we're going to hear from an expert on an area that challenges California. We'll find out how these policies came about and what steps we can take to reverse the trends. After each speaker, we'll offer a bonus session like the one today that I've mentioned. For our first meeting today in 2021, we're very fortunate to have Senator Grove come to speak to us today about where she sees the state going and how we can reverse the worst trends in California. Senator Grove was born and raised in Kern County. After graduating from high school, Senator Grove served in the U.S. Army, and this is very cool. While stationed in Frankfurt, she witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Following her service to our nation, she established a staffing company with her sister-in-law called Continental Labor and Staffing Resources. Senator Grove currently serves as the CEO of that company. Prior to her election to the state Senate, Senator Grove was the first woman veteran elected to the California legislature, and she served the 34th Assembly District from 2010 to 2016. Senator Grove was elected in November 2018 to represent the 16th Senate District, which includes Kern, Tulare, and San Bernardino counties. In January of 2019, she was elected leader of the Senate Republican caucus. She's the first female vet and the third female to serve in the top leadership post of the Senate Republican caucus. Senator Grove is an advocate for small business, the developmentally disabled, farmers and families. She currently lives in Kern County with her husband, Rick. They're the proud parents of 5 children, and she's a senator. This is amazing, and 6 grandchildren. And I hear she's a true conservative in a group of imposters, unfortunately. Please welcome Senator Shannon Grove.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was really sweet. And it definitely is my honor to be here with you guys today. I sure do wish it was in person. And I wish that we could get back to some semblance of normalcy so that we could have the opportunity to meet in person, fellowship. So let me give you a little update of what's going on in the Capitol. And then I'll just take questions if that's okay. So over the past 10 months, the governor's shutdowns have made it very difficult to live, work, or own a business for millions of Californians. More than 19,000 small businesses have already closed their doors and left for good. And with them are countless families who depend on that income to pay for food, housing, and other necessities. Backlogged unemployment claims are nearly 1 million, even though we've been in this situation for 10 months. And people still cannot get through. And a recent audit came out that said less than 1%, think about that, less than 1% of the calls into the EDD were answered. And the state's unemployment department has somehow allowed fraud to run rampant with murderers on death row inmates, and someone even using Senator Dianne Feinstein's name was able to receive millions of dollars in benefits that unemployed workers, because of Gavin Newsom's shutdown, couldn't obtain. Some felons who received unemployment checks were like Scott Peterson, who murdered his wife and unborn son, Royal Clark, who was convicted of killing 2 young girls and assaulting another, Asario Aguirre, who was convicted of torturing and murdering his girlfriend's 8-year-old son, Susan Eubanks, who shot her 4 sons ages 4 to 14 at point blank range in the head after a night of drinking and drugs. All of those individuals were able to obtain unemployment benefits to the tune of millions of dollars that has run rampant in the fraud system for our penitentiary. But hardworking Californians that were forced to leave their job because of the governor's shutdown are still waiting for benefits. EDD Fraud is now being exposed at a potentially over $11 billion with a B, $11 billion. when you're an average everyday citizen and you have to talk in millions and billions, and you don't operate your households like that, it's pretty devastating. So it's $11 billion in fraud, with EDD fraud with these prisoners, and they estimate that could be up to $30 billion. As a business owner in this state, which is like my real job, as a business owner, I know that what an EDD mess means for employers. Previously, in previous years, when California had a $10 billion deficit for unemployment benefits, it took years to resolve that and pay it back. And what happens is that the state just doesn't pay it, and then the federal government is responsible for obtaining those benefits, those checks that were sent out. And what they do is they do a food tax reduction credit, which is every year in January, you just get a bill from the state to send to the federal government, because the feds are not allowing businesses to have that tax reduction credit that we would normally get. It took 7 years to pay back that $10 billion. And if this fiasco is $30 billion, it'll still land on the backs of every small business owner and every business owner in the state of California. So now we're looking at a potential debt of about $50 billion in debt. We anticipate that will take over 12 years to pay back. Employers are going to pay the price through taxes, and it'll hurt our state even more. Think about the small business owner who's trying to operate at minimal capacity, either outdoor dining or curbside to go, or that aren't operating at all, or that minimal capacity through Zoom. They're still going to be saddled with this heavy tax if the governor doesn't step up and make sure it gets paid. The Republicans have been fighting since April to stop this EDD madness. In April, we wrote a letter to the governor about the failures of the EDD. That's April of last year. In June, Republicans asked for an independent audit of the EDD through the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, which is JLAC. Our Democrat members in JLAC canceled that hearing in August that would require that audit to take place, and they wanted to give the governor a little bit more time, which would have been an opportunity to review all this EDD nonsense that's going on. Because believe me, I know I wasn't the only legislator in the state of California whose phone was blowing up over not being able to reach the EDD and get benefits. In July, Republicans requested that Governor Newsom staff the EDD 24/7 so that they could clear up the backlog. He refused. In August, Republicans joined a coalition of legislators, delivering another letter to the governor demanding that he take action to improve the EDD operations, because the governor is over the EDDs. He's over the Secretary of Labor, which is over the Employment Development Department. And so the only legislative authority that we have is through the audit process. And we had been pushing for an audit. We, as the Republican caucus, had been pushing for an audit since, like I said, April of last year. In September, finally, members of the JLAC approved an audit that for the EDD that Republicans had requested. In December, we wrote another letter to the governor supporting our district attorneys to fight and stop EDD fraud, which these criminals have been perpetrating on the state of California and business owners. I asked that he provide them with adequate support and funding so that they can investigate and prosecute the high number of EDD fraud cases. And that still has not been fulfilled. So our counties that have a high prison population are using county resources in order to investigate the forensic stuff that goes on inside of prisons. And they're using county resources to expose this fraud. And it's very frustrating that the governor isn't willing to help with that. But I guess the more fraud that we expose, the worse he looks. So now several of my Republican colleagues and I are introducing legislation to clean up this mess. And we also demanded yesterday and sent a letter that we want the Legislative Audit Committee to immediately convene and start implementing the processes that the auditor has exposed on EDD. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Capitol building while we're trying to solve the EDD problems. Republicans in the Capitol are also working to restore California's promise. We have the Golden State. And our state is just in a downward spiral that is very heart-wrenching. It's just devastating. And now that the federal government has changed hands, I think the rest of the United States is going to understand where California is, because I believe that they're going to use California's policies across the nation. And when you think about it, and you hear all the news and everything that's going on, and them limiting, like banning on fracking or limiting oil production or electric cars and all these things. Well, we in California have been enduring all that stuff for years. So I think that the rest of the nation will wake up and really take hold. I believe that this federal government is going to do their best to make the United States of San Francisco, and that's pretty sad. So Republicans are working to restore the California promise by strengthening opportunities, protecting families and children, repairing trust in government, and those are the three pillars that we're going to operate under. And then under each one of those pillars, there's pieces of legislation that each member is introducing that they think will help benefit that pillar. So like strengthening opportunities for businesses to help them strive through the governor's shutdown, Keep California Working Act with Senate Bill 74, which is a measure that I'm sponsoring to provide $2.6 billion. These numbers, and plus he just released the budget, but $2.6 billion in grants to help small businesses that have taken a hit due to the shutdowns. The funds would come from additional revenue the state obtained this year, which is yet to be allocated, that has not been spent. Senate Bill 102 is a bill that our Republican colleagues have introduced that would support and prohibit regulatory boards and agencies like the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Alcohol Beverage Control from revoking licenses and penalizing small business owners for failure to comply with COVID-19 emergency orders. Protecting our families and our children who are falling behind due to the government-induced recession, school closures, and loss of jobs. We have a bill, Healthy Minds, Healthy Kids Act, SB 229, legislation that I'm sponsoring. It's actually Senator Daly's piece of legislation, but we've all jumped on board to help him. We're asking them to invest $500 million in mental health services for our children. The reason why is that, the not just a disparity that's going to happen with the education gap, but are really suffering. And there's a large number of suicides. There's a large number of depression, isolation. We've got to do what we can to help our children and adults, but we're focusing this piece of legislation on children. So one of the things we learned is rural internet connectivity is really difficult to have. And so rural internet connectivity is something that we want to make sure. I mean, this is the state of California. We're the home of Silicon Valley and the tech world and the tech industry. And there's a large percentage of our state that doesn't have internet connectivity for our families. And families need to have reliable internet access. So we want to open California schools. We want our schools, we want our children to be able to go back to school safely. We want to give more power to the local education and health agencies to reopen schools and ensure children can get back to learning. That's one of the things that we desperately want to make sure that we do this year. So we're pushing that piece of legislation. The third prong of repairing trust in our government, we are working hard on the EDD problem that I focused on earlier. We need to make sure that unemployed Californians get benefits, not prisoners. We need to make EDD work. I've introduced SB 39, which will mandate the unemployment department cross-check unemployment claims with prisoner information. So CDCR has Social Security numbers for prisoners, and the unemployment department has Social Security numbers from individuals that are filing for benefits. And there's no reason why that just can't be cross-referenced. Just give me 1 second. So I apologize. I live with my kids. I have the blessing to live with my kids up here, and they are now up and moving about. So I do apologize. But we want the EDD office to cross-reference just a simple cross-reference. If somebody applies for EDD benefits and they're in prison and they have a prison Social Security, a Social Security number tied to CDCR, then they shouldn't be able to get benefits. And then we should investigate how that person applied for benefits and did that person commit fraud. The governor was told to do this early last year, but he failed to do so. We shouldn't have to be where we are today, introducing legislations for Californians to deal with the unemployment agency issues and cross-reference them with Social Security numbers from CDCR. It's a pretty simple process. The other thing that we did is we wanted, when EDD first started mailing out benefit requests or benefit application processes, we were getting bombarded in our districts of hundreds of letters going to the same household, 50 letters, 30 letters. One person got 210 letters delivered to their home, all different names to the same address. So we knew that fraud was rampant. We reached out to Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, and the governor's office, and they said, we're aware of it, we're fixing it. And you have to understand, we operate in Democrat land, right? So we're aware of it. We're fixing it. We're only going to allow 10 particular pieces of mail to go to 10 separate applicants in one household. That's going to be the limit. That doesn't solve the problem. It really doesn't. And for them to think that it does is completely absurd. So going back to the cross-reference of, Social Security numbers with CDCR and the CDCR and the State Unemployment Office, 35 states already have this protocol. So it's not like we're, trying to invent the wheel or do anything new, right? We can just copy what 35 other states have done. Senate Bill 58 is a bill that I'm co-authoring to stop the state from allowing citizens at risk for identity theft. We want to remove Social Security numbers from any documents that the EDD sends out. So all of those letters that I just told you about, 200 to one household, 50-30 to other households, they all have individual Social Security numbers on these letters that come from the state. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Maybe just the last four, or maybe just the, come up with a different ID code or something. But, we want to remove the risk, the high risk that the EDD has put on California citizens for identity theft. And we want to make sure that that's eliminated. So that's another bill. We have SCR 5, a bill that Republicans have been that are reintroducing to end the state emergency order, so that we go back to a legislative process instead of the governor having sweeping control over just issuing executive orders. Like, for instance, Friday, we received notice that they were going to allow another region to, another region, I believe it was the Bay Area region, that was going to be able to open up because they had met the capacity for ICU capacity, and the numbers had dropped a little bit, a few percentage points. Saturday morning, recall numbers come out and they're up to 1.2 million signatures. Now, I'm not saying it's connected, but anyways, recall signatures come out. There's 1.2 million and they need 1.5 million, and they have another 200,000 that just came in. And then Saturday afternoon, the California Restaurant Association released an email that says the governor's going to lift the stay-at-home order across the state and end the curfew. And we're going back to the gummy bear system, I guess is the best way to explain it, the color-coded system. So we are trying to restore checks and balances. We want to make sure that the governor doesn't just have sweeping authority of one-man rule in California. I've often said that it's very unnerving to me that we have the top 3 food producing counties in the entire world, and that the governor could immediately just shut off water to those food producing counties, and then it would disrupt not only California's food supply, but also the world's food supply. We have the top 3 agricultural producing counties in the entire world. Other things that he's doing, just sweeping reforms on executive orders. That needs to stop. And we need to go back to a legislative process where bills are introduced, they're heavily debated, the public has an opportunity to comment on, there's more transparency, and then it goes to both houses and then to the governor's desk for signature. So we want to reopen California. We want to reopen California safely. We want to make sure that businesses have the opportunity to operate and employ people and give them an opportunity to provide for their families. So obviously, you guys know the governor just released his 21-22 budget in early January. Prior to this release, we sent him a budget request along with the Republican budget chair for our priorities. We asked to help open small businesses, which I mentioned above. We've asked for assistance for schools. We've asked for money for our district attorneys to investigate what's going on in the prison system to stop the fraud. And then it was encouraging to see the governor prioritize some fiscal relief for the state's small businesses. He did offer or propose $1 billion in his budget. And I know it's an awful lot of money, but with all the businesses in the state of California that have been shut down for 10 months, barely surviving. And then when he does open up, like a fluke or whatever, he wakes up in the morning and goes, I think I'm going to open today. Those businesses have to put up plexiglass. They have to, order equipment if you can get it, if you can even get it. They have to order supplies, and then a few days later they're shut down again. So there's a lot of open and close, which the inconsistency is more harmful to our small business owners because they, what do they do with all the product that they've already purchased, like a restaurant? So we're glad that he did offer $1 billion. We've asked for a little bit more. The governor's budget continues to provide funding for little pet projects like high-speed rail. You know, church is not essential and small business is not essential, but high-speed rail is essential. So he made sure that high-speed rail still gets funded and that it remained actively being built while many businesses were being shut down. So there's a lot of things that are in the budget that are his pet projects. Republicans are pushing for transparency and accountability, and we want real support for businesses. And we want to make sure that our kids get back to school safely. So how about I stop there and take questions if you guys have any questions? And I hope I didn't talk too long. I'm going to look at the chat right now to see if there's anything in there. Let's see what it says. Have you had any success with one? I don't have my glasses on. Somebody's gonna have to read that for me. Have you had any success with one connection with your Democrat colleagues to change the heart and minds on these issues? That was from Jane. I think. I can't read it. Sorry, you guys.
We can read it to you, Shannon.
I should go get my glasses.
No,
I'm
that's
blind.
okay.
I'm blind and too vain to wear glasses.
Sounds familiar. Only I'm stuck with them. Okay, anyway, she wants to know if you've had any success in talking to your Democrat colleagues to change the hearts or minds on this issue.
So I can tell you, like that SCR, that 5 that we have, the SCR to eliminate the governor's emergency authority. We introduced that, Ms. Melendez, who is the author of that, introduced it at the beginning, middle, and end of every floor session. They would say, Ms. Melendez, for what purpose do you rise? I would like to call, as you know, SCR 5 out of rules so that we can have a vigorous debate on the governor's executive authority. You know, she made her little speech, which was very good and very convincing. And then they just made a motion to lay the motion on the table, which means we're not going to take a vote on it because they didn't want any of their targets per se, or people that are in difficult seats to vote on not supporting that. Because I think the people of California definitely want that. But so they just laid the vote on the table. So everybody voted to lay the vote on the table and the vote wasn't taken up. Then the next day we would show up on floor and we would say, we want to move this bill out of rules. We expect a vigorous debate. The people of California want this. They want to end this one-man rule over our state. And then again, they would stand up to make a motion to lay the bill on the table. So it would never get a vote.
These people sound kind of crazy. We have some really good questions for you, actually, so I'm glad you're able to take them.
Sure.
From Kathy and Brad, they want to know why hasn't there been an executive order supporting the state legislation to order school teachers back to the classrooms? They should be considered essential personnel, similar to police and fire departments. What's your take on that?
So because the governor is Governor Gavin Newsom and he is beholden to the California Teachers Union, and he is not going to issue a executive order ordering teachers back to school. And what's really sad is that, you know, so I represent Kern County, San Bernardino County, and Tulare County, and we have a very diverse population. We have a large Latino population, we have a large Black population, we have a large Punjabi population, and we have a large a lot of wealth. So we have high wealth people, you know, and then we have some people that are really struggling in, you know, lower socioeconomic standards that we have in the Central Valley. So it's a very diverse area that I represent. And, you know, my son-in-law is an engineer and a welder, and my daughter is a nurse. And so my grandkids that are 8 and 7, they're getting their education and their parents are focused on what is going on. And we get calls from the office. A 7-year-old is on the phone translating for her parents. And she's saying that, you know, her parent, my mom and dad can't teach me this class. I have to translate for them. And so you have a first generation Latino family that the child is the translator and trying to educate herself and teach her parents how to educate her. You have single moms. We had a single mom that worked at Walmart stocking the shelves at night and then comes home at 7 o'clock in the morning and is expected to teach her children. So it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. So if we had a different governor that cared about the disparity in education and what's going on in our children's lives and making sure that our parents, you know, are secure in, our school kids going back to school, then he would sign an executive order. But the governor isn't going to sign an executive order against the California Teachers Association.
I've been wondering how the standoff's ever going to end between the teachers and opening schools anyway. Jan, did you have a question?
I really have a really general question, because you guys, the Republicans are doing such a great job. But we're not getting the word out to those voters in the middle who might support us because they haven't heard. So what would be a good way for us Republicans to try to get the word out, for example, to our neighbors who are Democrats but are suffering with their children at home? How can we tell them that it's the Democrats, it's the governor that is keeping their kids at home without sounding crazy? Question.
Yeah. So just so you know that this last 2 years, we've improved the Republican Party, as leadership, myself, Jessica, and Marie have improved communications drastically. We had over 15 million communications in 1 year. In the previous cycle, the previous 2-year cycle, there was less than a third of that. So we have neighborhood team leaders. You can also always sign up to be a neighborhood team leader. And then we email you information that's going on in the building. Because, really, you guys pay attention to it, but the average everyday person, once you get out of the Capitol or out of a Republican Women event, they don't know what AB5 is or AB 227 or ACR. It's like foreign language to people, right? They're going to the grocery store trying to provide for their families, just everyday life. So if you want to be a neighborhood team leader, you just go to the CRP website and you sign up, and then they give you stuff every week. Every couple of days, you'll get stuff and say, like right now we have a bill going through. I think it's SB, Dominic's on the phone, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's SB 29. And that piece of legislation is to do all mail ballots. And it's going to require registrar of voters to do all mail ballots, even in these special elections that we have, like down in Los Angeles in March. And that means everybody who's on the rolls. And California has not purged their rolls in decades. And California is the only state in the nation that does not comply with the federal requirement to purge their rolls. So it's going to be a disaster. So that piece of legislation. So you could share that piece of legislation, and you don't have to make it partisan. You say, what do you think about all mail ballots? Everybody getting a ballot. Think about the people who have moved out of California that are going to get a ballot. Think about the people who have, died in California. I think there's been like 144,000 people that have, expired or died, and they, all got a ballot. So you have to think about all those things and who's really making those decisions on people that are voting. The other thing is that what we didn't know, and again, it's all these things hidden in legislation and interpreted, since I'm on voting, interpreted. I don't want to say we didn't interpret it like that, but the Democrats did. So one of the things they did, so like if you're caring for an elderly mom and dad, like an elderly parent, and I got an email the other day that said a text message from somebody that says, this is just absolutely crazy. They sent this mail to my mom at her skilled nursing facility, and they're asking her to register to vote. She's 88 years old and she has full-blown dementia. Now, her son was still required not in order to get care, but in order for the process to continue for services, they have to fill out that voter registration card for his mom, who has full-blown dementia and is not capable of voting. The people that get to vote for that person is the caregivers in the facility. So the caregivers in the facility can actually do that. I had another person tell me that their mom was in a facility, and their mom was in the facility, and she found out that her mom had gotten a ballot. So she went in and she said, "Hey, I need my mom's ballot." And they go, "Oh, we fill that out for them and mail it back in." So there's a lot of things going on, and we need to just expose it. Simple things. I think you can talk to any Democrat. I have calls from Democrats that are very concerned about children going back to school. And it's like, well, did you realize that, the governor is not allowing this to happen? And just have a general conversation with them. but be a neighborhood team leader.
This is
Thank
crazy.
you. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
And Ruth Weiss is going to be talking later about some of these laws that are coming up. Is there anything that you can do? This is a question from Jim Westfall. Anything that you can do to clean up voter registration rolls? Is there any sort of legislation or anything like that that could be started?
So we've introduced legislation, obviously, to clean up voter registration rolls, and it's died. Shirley Weber, who is going to be the new Secretary of State over voter registration and voting, is going to be confirmed. There's no doubt that she's going to be confirmed this Thursday, tomorrow. So we've introduced, Republicans over the past years, even when I was in the Assembly, we did that. I have a voter ID bill that's being introduced. Make sure that you have an ID to vote. Or you have an ID to request a mail-in ballot. And I think mail-in ballot should be requested and not just automatically mailed out. So we have worked hard to try to do that. We are way outnumbered and we can't do that. And I can tell you that they benefit, the other side benefits from the way that the vote by mail system works. There's also Election Integrity Project. I know that you guys have probably had Linda Payne. They actually filed a lawsuit against the state of California. And that lawsuit is moving forward because they have put it pretty simply in this lawsuit with an attachment page. And it just basically says, dead people, 100 and something thousand, people that have alternate addresses in other states, 56,000. She just goes down the list of all of these voters and then provides a list of these voters so that nobody has to go, dig or put any effort into it. They're providing the information and handing it right to them. So we're hopeful that that election integrity lawsuit will have some legs and go someplace. So you guys could help support Election Integrity Project. I do.
We do. We definitely do. And Ruth Weiss is the California Vice President for them, and she'll be speaking here in just a minute.
Oh, good.
More about legislation coming up. Jan, did you have something?
Is there anything that we can do to influence the Dems? Does it do any good to call their offices? I mean, we've even marched into Jim Bell's office one time, but is there anything that we can do that can, stop some really bad legislation?
Absolutely. I think active engagement, obviously, active engagement. I mean, if your legislator, whether they're a Dem or a Republican, if your legislator never hears from you, and he only hears from the people that are pushing him to, keep the state shut down, or, all electric vehicles, or, people that are environmental people that don't want the forests, the forest cleaned or cleared, or if he's only hearing from one side, then it's easy for him to make decisions that are detrimental to us. And the reason why is because he never hears from us, right? So even if you have a Democrat legislator, which I know you guys do, engage with that person, write them letters, call their office, go to their office. If events, if they're doing Zoom events, and you get notice of a Zoom event, sign up to be notified for Zoom events. And if he's holding a Zoom event, ask those questions. Ask those questions. Senator Bell's not there now. Who took his place? I don't remember.
Cortese.
Cortese. So Cortese seems pretty, I don't want to say reasonable, but he seems more reasonable than Jim Bell, if based on the few interactions that I've had with him. Yeah, we shall see. But we shall see. But I don't know. I've only had a couple of interactions with him, but he seemed more reasonable than Jim Bell to me. So I think it's important that even if you're a Republican and you're a staunch conservative and they're a left-leaning Democrat that's elected, I still think that you go and engage with them because they need to know that there is a difference of opinion in their district.
So don't just give up on it.
Don't give up.
Okay.
What Churchill say? Never, 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 never give up.
That's a quote from a really cool guy.
Yeah.
Okay, question from Paulette. She wants to know if there's any legislation proposed about curtailing the powers of county health officers, because ours here in Santa Clara County is really heavy-handed.
No, not that I know of. I can have Dominic check and I can email Jan or you, Wendy, and let you know, and you can give an update. Not that I know of. I just can't think of anything right now. I know that that the legislation was passed a couple of years ago. Like, it's almost like I think that, when I think back and look at like, Monday morning quarterback type thing, And you look back, it's like, you know, why 2.5 years ago, and we'll have to find that bill, and Dominic can find it and I can send it to you. Why 2.5 years ago did they introduce a piece of legislation to give public health officers this much control, right?
Mhm.
And then a year later, they introduced something else. And then now we find ourselves in this position. Our public health officer in Kern County it just depends on where you live in the state. Our public health officer in Kern County is a great public health officer. I mean, when the governor at the beginning back in April said, you know, hey, get outside, walk your dog, you know, get some sunshine. The governor was get some sunshine. I mean, he opened tennis courts, swimming pools. I mean, he opened, you know, anything outside with sunshine, bike paths, everything. My sheriff and my district attorney and my local law enforcement are not enforcing any orders that the governor has. They publicly have said so online. And so I don't know, we have kind of not really shut down the entire time. So, and if people do shut down and they don't want to operate their business, then that's their choice as an American and freedom, you know, and if people want to operate and take, you know, if, you know, look at that risk of operating and still want to operate, then that's their choice and their freedom as an American. So we're just different. And I know you guys are under some pretty strict rules up there.
Pretty stringent lockdown. Okay. Go ahead, Jan.
Let me ask this question. I'm sorry, Jan, to whoever asked that question. So where would that authority go? Would it go back to the state?
Which could be worse.
Yeah, for us, maybe not for you guys, but for us it would be.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
who would it go? Would it go back to Dr. Galley, who has, you know, guided the governor to shut down, you know, lock down 10 o'clock, you know, curfew? So I guess that would be a question I'd want to ask. Like, if we took it away from local control, which is closest to the people, where would it go? Oh, she says Board of Supervisors. I just saw that. I can see it when it's in black. Yeah, local county Board of Supervisors. That'd be great. But I think they would still delegate it to the public health officer that they're over.
Yeah, we have a zillion great questions here, and I don't know how much more of your time we can take.
I have to be on a call in about 20 minutes, so we got time, a little bit of time.
Okay, can we do anything about churches to help churches?
So a lot of churches opened on Pentecost Sunday, which is May 31st, which I supported. Lots of churches. I know there's churches that are being fined, but there was a Supreme Court case that was heard that was brought by, I think, Harvest Rock Church down in Pasadena. And then that was kicked back to the lower courts. It is now back at the Supreme Court. There's also 2 other cases at the Supreme Court because the Democrats have desperately overstepped their bounds interfering with the faith community. So we're hoping that will be helpful. You can help local churches by that are having problems with their local public health officers. Like if they're fined, you know, we haven't had it in my district, like I said, because our district attorney and they're not going to fine a church. But I've sent money to like John MacArthur's church. I've sent money to a little small church in Valencia that was being fined, got fined $1,000. And for this little tiny church, it was that $1,000 is a lot of money. So I got a couple of people to pitch in and we covered that $1,000 to help them with that fine. I think John MacArthur's church is fined up to, I think $800,000 was the last number that I saw. Rob McCoy's church down in Thousand Oaks is being fined, I think $3,000 a weekend. So if you have the ability to tithe to one of those churches to help them, that would be great. Advocate for them, you know, just support them, pray for them, cover them in prayer, cover our entire nation in prayer. I mean, we need God to intervene with what's going on. And I believe the hand of God is on our nation. I really do. I don't think he's abandoned the United States. This is at all. I don't think that at all. So I just think that we need to pray for our nation. We need to pray for our state, and we need to, you know, cover our churches, our business leaders, all of our leaders, even the governor and the president in prayer, because if God can intervene and touch their heart and they don't make the decisions that make our lives devastating, horrific, that's beneficial to us.
Very true. We have a Calvary Chapel here in San Jose, and I think they're pushing $1 million in fines.
Mm-hmm.
And they are open for 2 services every weekend.
Yeah.
And it's a North Valley Baptist Church that's open also.
I think that the church will prevail. I really do. And what I really like, I mean, I guess, Romans 8:28 says, that God works all things out together for good for those of us who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's one of my favorite scriptures because, in 2010, because of my faith, when I got elected to the assembly, I'd get invited to all these churches to speak, right? And the pastor would give me strict instructions, don't be partisan, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Stay neutral, please don't, talk about the other party. And I'm like, okay. And now you have pastors that are speaking at President Trump's rallies. You have pastors that are ballot harvesting in there. We had one church ballot harvest almost 14,000 ballots for us. And of course, the Secretary of State and the Attorney General filed a lawsuit against us because we were doing that. But, we just basically pointed out to them that, you sponsored this bill, a Democrat carried this bill, Governor Brown signed this bill, and we're just using language in the bill. But they don't want us to ballot harvest in churches, gun ranges, and veterans halls is what their issue is. So I can just tell you that, we just need to stay vigilantly active, and I think the church will prevail. And they're actively engaging in politics. They are registering voters in their foyer. They have voter registration drives. They are putting together programs that, how you go to church and you have like programs for dating single and programs for counseling for marriage and programs on, like healthy marriage or programs on finance. A lot of churches are putting a program together on politics. And just simply like Jan said, like, how do you converse with people that are from the other side of the aisle? You simply say, the platform for the Democrats are, abortion up to the day of birth, all of these bills that hurt us being able to provide housing for, so housing is provided. It's another bill they're discussing. You guys should know about that. It hasn't materialized yet, but since I said housing, my mind's going down a rabbit hole. Instead of offering dollars for disenfranchised and poor people to rent apartments or subsidizing their rent and the eviction notifications and all, protections and all of that stuff, they're talking about building housing to let them purchase, the state would purchase that and give it to the people to live in, and then they would have an asset.
Well, going along with that, we have a question.
Sure.
There are property owners who are trying to evict their tenants, after 60 days, but under this, they're not paying rent under COVID. They've become squatters. And there's nothing that the property owner is being able to do to get rid of these squatters in their homes. So is there anything going on in the state legislature to protect property owners?
No, not to protect property owners, but there is a piece of legislation that's going to be heard tomorrow on the floor to extend that eviction notice, I believe up to, Dominic's going to have to correct me, but I think it's August of 2021, maybe. I don't know the date, so you have to forgive me. I don't know the date, but it's going to extend the eviction moratorium. Like, you're not going to be able to evict your tenants. And, I wish they, we've often asked and said, look, what about the people that, like, I know a lot of people that have like 3 or 4 properties, like, just apartments, townhouses, things like that, that's their retirement income. Like, they invested, worked hard, bought those properties, and that's their retirement income. And some of them still have mortgage payments due to the banks. So what happens to the people who can't make their mortgage payments? Why can't we make a deal with the banks? If you guys are going to force the eviction moratorium issue, then why can't we make a deal with the banks and force the banks not to foreclose on these property owners until we get through this COVID situation? I mean, if it's that desperate, let's work on both sides. Because if the property owner loses that property because of foreclosure, how is that beneficial to the tenant? Those are all what I think are common sense.
Sounds like you have an incoming call.
Not me.
Not me. It's me, and I shut it off. I don't know why it's doing that.
Not me. Yeah.
Okay, can I ask one more question, since it was asked early on and was asked by my husband? So So Shannon, do you have any plans to run for higher office?
Right now, no. I got my hands full right now. I have 2 more years left in the Senate. You all know I just got removed from leadership. I'm sure everybody saw that. So I leave the Senate Republican, the minority leader position on February 15th. It transitions to Senator Scott Wilk from Santa Clarita. I think he'll do a great job. You need to know that every leader serves at the pleasure of the caucus. And if the caucus thinks that a leader is too conservative or, for whatever reason, you serve at the pleasure of your caucus members. And so that transition is taking place on the 15th. I'll do everything I can to help make Senator Wilk successful, because if he's successful, then we're all successful. So, right now we have Senator Bates, Senator Nielsen, myself, Senator Dolly, that will be leader emeritus. So it's just a season, I guess, a season. I think God put me in the season in this difficult 2-year cycle that we just had because of my fundraising skill. We raised more money in a COVID year than the previous cycle, than the entire, previous cycle. And we needed that money to try to help save seats. We were able to keep Senator Wilk elected, which was a tough seat. We were able to keep him elected, and we were also able to bring in Rosalicia Ochoa Bogue, who is the first fluent and literate Latina woman in the Republican caucus. We've had Latina women like Miss Melendez, right? Who's married to her husband, but she doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't write Spanish. I mean, I love her. She's conservative and she's awesome. But so Rosalicia is the one who's going to be able to go on Telemundo and Univision. And when the Democrats say, oh, these Republicans, and they sway Latino votes, Rosalicia will be able to correct that information and show proof that it's not us, that it is them. And hopefully that will bring a lot of Latinos to our party, which is traditionally they're with us on social issues. And it will allow us to stop the lies that the Democrats tell the Latino people so that they can join our party, because they want their kids to go back to school and they do support life. And they are a very faith-based, very faith-based and a very faithful people. And so we hope that, we hope having her there will help us tremendously. We know it will. As far as me running for higher office, I get asked that all the time. When the time comes, I'll pray about it. And I just, I know my faith plays a big part of who I am, and I would rather be in Iraq than in the mall without Jesus and being on the path that he has for me. So we'll see we'll just pray about it. And, some people think I'm crazy, but I really do believe that God puts me on a path, and I'm going to walk the path that he puts me on.
I will say amen to that. Many of us are involved the way we are because we've been called to do that.
Amen.
So
Amen.
We get it, and I think more people will get it soon. So
yes.
Wendy, is there any other question you have for Senator Grove?
I have one last question. Any words of advice or counsel for CAGOP? Are we helping you guys?
Yes, so you are. So I can tell you that the CAGOP, 3 women leaders, we raised more money. We raised $35 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. We raised $35 million. Our communications team, because when we took over, there was zero, we did a lot of mail, but we didn't do digital media and, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I mean, we had them, but they were very low, and I don't know if you followed the CAGOP. Our new graphics people, I don't know if you saw it, but when Governor Newsom made that decision to just open up the state, we like mail. We like, a piece of mail coming to our house. I read every piece of mail that comes to my house. But these 30-year-olds, you have to catch them on their Instagram feed or Twitter feed. So we have to be able to communicate like that. And they're not going to read, a long diatribe of, what AB5 is or what, SB 29 is. They're not going to do it. But if you do something simple in a graphic, and I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was it was Bart Simpson. And all it did was say, this is the way Governor Newsom makes decisions about our lives. And those little things you used to have, and you go like this, and they would open up, and the little
Cootie catchers.
Yes, well, and they open up like it's a little paper thing that you can make. I don't even know what it's called. What'd you call it, Jan?
We called them cootie catchers when I was in
cootie catchers. So it's one of those things, and you just use it, and it's got Bart Simpson, and he's like, which one do I pick today? Which one do I pick? That kind of thing. So, and that got oh gosh, I can't even tell you, hundreds of thousands of hits, because it was a simple message. It was a cartoon. It was funny. I mean, putting his head on the Wizard of Oz, right? Putting Gavin Newsom's head on the Wizard of Oz with the smoke and the curtains, and it's, or putting him on like The Price is Right, and he's like, and then the caption is, "Who gets to open today?" And the governor's going, "Door number 1." So all of those little things make people think, is he really making decisions like that? And then maybe they get on, the internet and they investigate it. So the CAGOP communications team has upped their game 1,000-fold over the last 2 years. We've reduced cost and spending so that we can have more money in our legislative races. And, I go in and I'm like, why are we doing that? And they're like, well, we've always done that. And I'm like, but that's not, I mean, me, right? I'm like, that's stupid, you guys. We have to fix that. I really tried to be more, I don't know, politically correct, I guess. And then so we were spending a tremendous amount of money on an event that we did at the Grand Del Mar, and we moved that event and saved almost $250,000. Now it's not something we've always, we just went against the status quo. And so we really did try to change a lot. You guys, I mean, our local Republican parties have done just an outstanding job, staying communicated. There's 100 people on this call, 96 now, 95. Anyways, can't see the number, but there was 100 people on this call. That's significant, right? And all of these 100 people are getting this information and the updates that you're going to have in a few minutes on the bills. And then they're going to be able to share that. And even if you shared that with just 10 people, that's 1,000 people that would get this message. And then those people, even if they shared it with 5 people, I mean, it just continually goes. And that's why I think it's important that you sign up as a neighborhood team leader so that we can get you information. And then we work on local candidates and recruiting local candidates for local seats, that kind of stuff.
That is great. That's so good. Thank you so much for being here today. This has been fantastic. Is there anything else there, Jan?
No, I just want to say thank you, Senator Grove, for supporting us and for coming on and for being that voice of reason. And we appreciate it.
And please stay in touch because we love the work you're doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know you guys have my cell phone number. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call. And just keep up the good work. I mean, I keep saying there has to be a point where Californians will wake up. And I think we are reaching that point. And I really do. And I think people are looking for a change. So God bless you guys. Thank you for letting me be on.
Thank you so much
for being here, and hope to have you back again soon.
Anytime.